Hello, I'm Bob Pickel, Chair of the Management Board of Prime Finance. Welcome to another edition of PRIMEtime 2.0, Prime Finance's series of conversations with people in the world of international finance and law. PRIMEtime 2.0 follows on from the original PRIMEtime, a series of hour-long presentations during the pandemic about a range of topics. Like the original PRIMEtime sessions, PRIMEtime 2.0 conversations are available on our website, www.primefinancedisputes.org, and on our YouTube channel. I'm delighted to be joined today by Heikki Cantell, someone who has been involved in Prime Finance from its early days, originally as an expert and now also as a member and secretary of our management board. Heikki is a lawyer and has over 40 years of experience in the legal and financial worlds, a quintessential Prime Finance expert. Heikki is currently general counsel and head of the legal department at Nordic Investment Bank, and earlier this year took on the additional role as chair of the board of directors at FinnFund, a development financier and impact investor operating in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Heikki, welcome to PRIMEtime 2.0.
Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here. And of course, I realize that I have a great privilege that somebody takes an interest in me and I get to talk about myself. I try to be disciplined and not overly eager to talk about myself. It's a rare opportunity. So thank you very much.
Well, that's why we're here. So don't hold back too much, but we do like to keep these to 15, 20 minutes, just a casual conversation, sure. And we'll jump right into it. So you started your career in what I might say was a fairly traditional way. You worked at a bank, you worked at a law firm, you have worked for a few years at a foundation, and then I don't know if your career took a turn or just a natural evolution, moving on to these roles as general counsel at two international financial institutions, the Counsel of Europe Development Bank and Nordic Investment Bank. So what attracted you to those roles and what kind of prepared you for stepping into those roles as general counsel?
Thank you, Bob. It really was not in the cards. It wasn't in my plans. I did not know much about international organizations and didn't have a career plan to orient myself to that direction. So I was all happy to work first for the Finnish Cultural Foundation. I'm very keen on culture, music in particular, and other forms of culture also, and thought that as a lawyer I could always work somehow in relation to cultural matters. And then it turned out that when I started my career after graduation in a law firm, that I really got interested in the law firm work and loved the way a law firm functions and the dynamics with the clients and the variety of cases. And then it was a surprise to me that I was approached by a headhunter, a recruitment firm that wanted to meet me for the role of the general counsel in the Council of Europe Development Bank. Little did I know what the general counsel actually would do in an international organization. I didn't know much about banking, finance, and international organizations, and yet, for some obscure reason, I'll never know why, they decided to recruit me. For me, if I speak truly and honestly, I will say that I chose to follow that opportunity because I was so extremely flattered that somebody would know about me and would want to see me and would propose such a role to me. And my original plan was definitely that I would do the general counsel role for a couple of years, and that would sort of qualify me and graduate me from the Finnish law firms in Helsinki and Paris, where I had been working for larger firms, international firms, Anglo-Saxon firms maybe, and that was my initial plan. But then I stayed because the work is fascinating, and I've been doing a lot of recruitment throughout my career in international organizations, and mostly the first inspiration that anybody who you interview talk about is the do good aspect of these organizations, that you get a very strong feeling that your paper dry work, sometimes paper dry work, actually contributes to something that tries to make this world a little bit better. And that is an attraction, and you feel that you're very much involved in and following closely what's happening in the political world. because these organizations definitely are part of the political world. And trying to make a difference is probably the thing that really attracts you the most. Then another aspect, and that is maybe more delicate also with the members of PRIME, is that there are differences in being a law firm lawyer and then being in-house. And the advantages of in-house, everybody would guess, is that you sort of become part of the strategic management of an organization. You follow the processes from their very inception till their conclusion. Whereas when you're a law firm lawyer, you're an expensive outside resource, and your utilization on your participation is limited.
You mentioned the political aspect. We'll be circling back to that a little bit later in the conversation, because that's obviously quite relevant these days. So I guess then the shift to the Nordic Investment Bank was a little bit more natural, familiar territory, maybe a little bit different in certain respects. But what attracted you to that role?
I indeed started in the Council of Europe Development Bank already back in '95. That was in Paris, wonderful place to be. I spent more than 13 years there, and then was called by the Nordic Investment Bank. It was maybe a phase in my career where I felt that I already pretty much knew my way at the Council of Development Bank. Not that it was repetitive, but still I knew what the house was about and how it functions, and not many surprises anymore. What attracted me with the Nordic Investment Bank was that the Council of Europe Bank will act and be active in its member countries on the European continent, whereas the Nordic Investment Bank, even though smaller in size by the number of member countries, even if the balance sheet is larger than the Council of Europe Development Banks, they even though only 8 member countries, the Nordic Investment Bank has over 40 countries of operation around the world. So I found that by returning to my home country, Finland, and joining the Nordic Investment Bank, actually I could broaden my scope to activities all around the world, and that I felt was an attractive option.
Yeah. Okay. So with all that going on, you've taken on this additional role as chair of the board of directors of FinnFund. You want to tell us a little bit more about FinnFund and what convinced you to go into that role for I don't know what the term is, but I know you'll be doing that for several years, no doubt.
Indeed, I'm the chair of the board of FinnFund, which is a national development finance institution. This development finance institution focuses by its mandate and supervised by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It focuses on private sector financing in developing countries. And the goal is to boost and enhance the economies in the developing countries, rather than giving them money, make the economies fruitful and work well, and develop the business activities in those countries, and raise the level of livelihood in the countries that way. And so it's private sector financing, it's loans, and it's equity investments. And somehow it felt when this opportunity was given to me, I didn't apply for it. I was again a bit flattered that I would be contacted for that role by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I somehow felt that my over 30 years in these development organizations and international financial institutions, that it was meant to be that the experience could serve also a national development financial institution. And I think I have a lot of things to learn in that role, and the FinnFund has a very skilled and multi-talented sort of workforce and staff. And at the same time, I feel that my several decades of experience in development financing can maybe also be of use for that organization. So it seems like the right thing.
Any particular direction or initiative you want to take forward with the FinnFund?
FinnFund indeed has financed private sector initiatives and gone into capital of small enterprises, medium-sized enterprises, and also gives loans with reasonably advantageous terms. I think it's a challenging task because that's an organization that by definition takes a lot of risk, much more risk than the other financial institutions I've worked for, which brings along the fact that some projects are huge successes and some go completely bust. And that is something I need to learn to understand and live with, that the risk management is slightly different. But that is how you create impact, by daring to take risk and going where others would not go, and maybe catalyzing financing by others. So I think that role is very meaningful in those countries. We now recently have also a mandate from our current government to not only look at the most poor countries and the most needy countries, but also to promote countries that have special problems, and one of them is Ukraine, where we all know that the situation is very special, and they definitely need financing, and yet it's not easy to find bankable projects there. So that is a new type of challenge for the FinnFund. I mean, formerly going to the poorest of the poor, and now going to a middle-income country, but that experiences very, very hard conditions for other reasons. So this flexibility and developing the relevance of FinnFund is maybe something that I mostly focus on now.
Yeah, I get the sense that there's a lot of interest in potential capital that would come into Ukraine if the situation there could ever be better settled. I can't remember if you were at our meeting in The Hague a couple of years ago, but we had the general counsel from, I think, the steel company that was had their plant occupied, or I guess the employees were holed up there during some battles, and she was very impressive, and clearly that organization was eager to get past all the strife, which of course has dragged on much longer than she might have expected even 2 years ago. So anyway, so it's there's a lot of potential there.
Absolutely, and when you get to interact with Ukrainians, I mean, there are absolutely brilliant people there, and there's a strong willingness to construct the country and make the best out of it, even under these circumstances. And then I'll be maybe a little bit blunt, but really direct about it. But one of the challenges, which is very obvious, is that many of the projects might have a Russian connection, and that is very understandable and obvious because it's a neighboring country, and yet you don't want to be involved in a project which involves then parties from Russia.
Right.
And I'll be just open and blunt about that.
So over 30 years of involvement in these IFIs, these international financial institutions. So how's the landscape changed over those years, and what do you see as the new challenges that you face?
Bob, I was pretty young at the time when I became the General Counsel of the Council of Europe Development Bank. I think I was 35 years of age, so it was a long time ago. I was always the youngest person in the room at that time, and I very soon, luckily, got admitted to the group of general counsels of international financial institutions, and that has been a mentor. I mean, I've got so many mentors from that group. It's been a reference for me. It has comforted me in understanding that most organizations face the same kind of challenges, and it has taught me so much. Indeed, for many years in those gatherings of the IFI General Councils, I was on a steep learning curve, would of course always share my experience from the Nordic Investment Bank or before that Council of Europe Development Bank. But then the big organizations, the seasoned lawyers who have been there for for ages, and then graduated as general counsels at the end of their career. I still have the fondest memories and huge respect to them, and they are the people I've learned many of the things that I know today, and that I maybe am sometimes capable and available to convey further. So what has changed is that I think that the whole field of international organizations, by definition, it has always been political, because these are organizations where sovereign nations come together to promote common goals through financing. But the political aspect has become even more challenging than before, and it is the current situation. Obviously, the different campments that we see, political sort of groupments on our planet, whereas 10 years ago we spoke about globalization and the challenges that the globalization may represent. Now today it's most countries and regions think first of themselves, and only after that globally. So deglobalization is something that we observe very strongly these past times, and that is not ideal for the international organization. But I would claim that this is exactly and precisely the time when the meaningfulness and raison d'etre for these organizations becomes even more evident. We need fora where nations come together, even when we disagree, and even when we at sometimes are at war. But there needs to be places where we still discuss and have a dialogue, and even sometimes try to promote common goals.
Right. Sure. So I was certainly aware of your role with involvement with that group of general counsels, because as you well know, we've had this relationship for several years with the International Finance Corporation, working on developing capital markets, particularly derivative markets, in a number of countries around the world. And so you've been very helpful there in helping us connect with some of those development banks elsewhere other than the IFC. And I guess I just generally, as we wrap up here, how can we as Prime Finance help support the efforts of organizations that you work with and some of your counterparts at other organizations?
Bob, indeed, as you mentioned, Prime has done absolutely tremendously good work and valuable work in capacity building in countries of operation of IFC, and some other IFIs also have this kind of activity where they try to build up capacity in their countries of operation. So that activity we should continue and try to find ways of making Prime useful in that work. But then another area is, of course, dispute resolution. And even though these organizations systematically try to settle their disputes outside any structured dispute resolution mechanisms, and of course it happens that you just can't avoid a dispute, and that's where the Prime expertise is expected to be needed when it comes to capital markets, especially, but there might be other areas also. I do realize, and I'm talking cautiously here, that Prime is primarily about capital markets and expertise in the markets, but I think that we start to cover with our membership nowadays and among our experts an even wider range of capacities. So I look at Prime as a source of highest level of expertise in the world, and when disputes arise in international organizations and we don't want to go to national courts, by definition, international organizations have their privileges and immunities, and one of them is jurisdictional immunity. We don't want to go to national courts to be judged by only one jurisdiction if we can avoid that. So that's where the arbitration and mediation also come into picture, and that's where Prime experts will certainly be of importance and can play a role.
When you spoke earlier at the very beginning about the call from the headhunter that took you in the direction of these IFIs, It reminded me, careers take a twist and a turn that you just can't anticipate. I mean, myself, as well as several of the people within Prime, started out at Cravath, Swaine and Moore just as general corporate lawyers, and then all of a sudden these things called derivatives came in, and Cravath started doing work, and the partners didn't want to have to deal with all the contracts these were pre-ISDA contracts that were being negotiated, so they threw a bunch of young associates at these contracts, and we're all friends 40 years later, and all actively involved in Prime, and we were actively involved in ISDA as well. So I think that's always something for anybody who's at a certain stage in their career to be open to when these opportunities arise, even though they may not be obvious choices.
Bob, isn't it a blessing that not everything is planned by ourselves, and that coincidences happen, and things happen, and twists and turns of career that you haven't planned for, that they come up. I think it's wonderful. That's how life should be.
Well, and it's also been great for me to get to know you over these our common years at Prime and going to the various events in The Hague. So I've really enjoyed getting to know you and spending more time with you now that you're on our management board and actively helping us with some of these efforts with the IFI. So I appreciate all those efforts, Heikki. Thank you.
Really appreciate that, and thank you, and appreciate your role as a leader and guide of the Prime experts. And I really look forward to seeing you soon, and also getting to know other experts even better at every gathering that we organize.
Great, great. Well, Heikki, thanks for taking the time today, and it was great talking to you and finding out a little bit more about all the things that you've done over your career, and it's very interesting. Thanks for all your thoughts.
My pleasure. Thank you.